The dawn broke gently over the village of Huron, where the fields stretched like endless blankets of green. Mist clung low to the earth, and the soil carried the smell of dew and hard work. In the middle of that quiet morning, 14-year-old Adiz balanced a rusty metal bucket on her head, her bare feet pressing against the damp ground as she walked back from the well. Her father, bent from years of labor, was already in the field with a hoe, turning over the soil before the sun grew merciless. Adiz dropped the bucket near the clay pot by their hut and hurried to join him. "Papa, let me do it," she said, taking the hoe before he could protest. Her father's tired smile betrayed pride and worry. "Ah, Adiz, school will begin soon. Don't let these fields steal your strength." But Adiz only gripped the hoe tighter. "The fields built my strength, Papa. Maybe they will build my mind too." He didn't answer, only looked at her with the eyes of a man who had known hunger, defeat, and yet still dreamed for his child. That morning, neither of them knew just how soon the world would test her strength. Not with soil and sweat, but with chalk and ridicule. The village buzzed with whispers when news spread that Adiz had earned a scholarship to St. Bartholomew's Academy, one of the most prestigious schools in the region. It was a place where the children of wealthy merchants, officials, and businessmen learned in polished classrooms with shining floors and tall gates. The farmer's daughter among them? It was almost laughable. On her first day, Adiz wore a faded uniform stitched carefully by her mother's hands. The seams were uneven, the fabric thinner than those of her classmates. Her shoes, borrowed from a cousin, were too big, stuffed with folded paper to stop her feet from sliding inside. As she stepped into the vast classroom, conversations halted, heads turned. Some students smirked, others giggled openly. She lowered her gaze, clutching her books tightly. At the front stood Mr. Obinna, the mathematics teacher, tall, stern, his eyes sharp like polished glass. He scanned the room and paused when his eyes landed on Adiz. "You must be the scholarship girl," he said flatly, loud enough for the class to hear. "Sit there." He pointed to a corner seat by the window, far from the center of attention, but perfectly placed for isolation. The murmurs began again as she obeyed, cheeks burning. The lesson began with equations sprawled across the blackboard. Mr. Obinna wrote with swift, confident strokes, filling the room with numbers and letters. Adiz's eyes darted across the board, her mind racing to keep up. She was sharp, but this pace was like running barefoot on thorns. Halfway through, a boy at the back whispered loudly, "Scholarship girl won't understand a thing. She only knows how to count goats." Laughter erupted. Adiz's ears burned. Mr. Obinna did not stop them. Instead, he smirked faintly. "Quiet. Let's see if the girl can prove you wrong." He turned, chalk in hand, and called out, "Adiz, come to the board." The room gasped with excitement. It was a spectacle. The poor farmer's daughter, exposed in front of the elite. Her steps felt heavy as she walked forward. She gripped the chalk, her hand trembling. On the board was a complex algebraic equation, one she had never seen before. The symbols seemed to mock her. Behind her, students whispered, giggled, and tapped their desks impatiently. Her chest tightened. She wanted to disappear into the cracks of the floor. She tried to write something, but the chalk snapped in her hand. The laughter grew louder. "Sit down," Mr. Obinna said coldly. "We don't solve problems with broken chalk or broken focus." She returned to her seat, her face hot with shame. That evening, back in the mud-walled hut, Adiz sat by the lantern's flickering light. Her mother patched clothes beside her, humming softly. Her father's snores drifted from the mat in the corner. Adiz opened her tattered notebook and stared at the equations that had humiliated her. She copied them slowly, then again, until her hand cramped. Every laugh she had heard in class replayed in her ears, but instead of breaking her, it fueled her. "I won't let them see me as a fool," she whispered to herself. "Not tomorrow. Not ever." And so, while the wealthy children slept on soft beds, she studied with the hum of crickets and the lantern's stubborn glow. Days turned into weeks. Each morning, Adiz worked the field before school. Each afternoon, she carried the shame of being the farmer's daughter among classmates who flaunted their polished shoes, fancy lunches, and expensive stationery. She endured jokes about her village accent and muddy hands. They mocked her lunch of yam and palm oil, comparing it to their imported biscuits and soda. But every night, she returned to her lantern, her notebook, and her determination. Slowly, the numbers began to make sense. Equations became less like walls and more like puzzles waiting to be solved. Yet the more she improved in silence, the more eager Mr. Obinna seemed to single her out. One afternoon, Mr. Obinna taught simultaneous equations. His chalk danced across the board, leaving a trail of complex symbols. Then he turned abruptly. Adiz solved this. The board was filled with a monstrous problem that left even the confident student silent. Gasps filled the air as Adiz stood, her legs shaky. This time, she didn't tremble as much. She stepped forward, heart pounding, and began. Her steps were slow, hesitant. The class chuckled at each pause, but she pressed on. For the first time, her answer began to take shape, nearly correct. Then, a cruel smile curved Mr. Obinna's lips. Wrong, he declared loudly before she could finish. Sit down. This is beyond you. Her chalk froze mid-stroke. She turned slowly, eyes wide. She had been close, so close. But he didn't even let her complete it. The class roared with laughter, and Adiz walked back to her seat, humiliated yet again. But this time, a spark of anger joined the shame. That evening, Adiz stopped by the home of an old man in the village, Uncle Chaik, once a retired schoolteacher who had lost his sight. He spent his days listening to the radio under a mango tree. Uncle, Adiz said softly, teach me math. He chuckled, his clouded eyes searching her face. How can I teach when I can no longer see the board? You don't need to see, she insisted. Just guide me with your words. I'll do the writing. Moved by her determination, he agreed. Night after night, she visited him after her farm work and school studies. With only his memory and her persistence, they rebuilt lessons the way others built walls. She learned tricks, shortcuts, and, most importantly, the patience to face numbers without fear. In class, Mr. Obinna's cruelty sharpened. He began to use Adiz as an example of failure. Class, he would say, pointing at her desk, this is what happens when you let farming replace thinking. Learn from her mistakes. Each insult stung, but each night she studied harder. Her classmates grew used to mocking her, their laughter a chorus. But one or two, quiet ones, began to notice something. Adiz wasn't as slow as the teacher made her seem. Her answers, when cut off, were often on the right track. But no one dared defend her. Not yet. One rainy afternoon, thunder shaking the windows, Mr. Obinna gave the class a particularly brutal test. The wealthy children groaned, scribbled, and panicked. Adiz bent over her paper. Her mind cleared despite the storm outside. Her pencil flew across the page, recalling every lesson with Uncle Chaik. When results came, she had scored the second highest. The class gasped. For a moment, whispers rippled, admiration, disbelief, shock. But Mr. Obinna's face darkened. A fluke, he snapped. Don't be deceived. The farmer's daughter got lucky. And just like that, the class laughed again, erasing the moment of triumph. But inside Adiz, something had shifted. She was no longer only defending herself. She wanted justice. Rumors spread that the regional mathematics contest was approaching. St. Bartholomew's always sent its best to compete. Mr. Obinna announced it in class, scanning the room with pride as students whispered eagerly. Then his gaze landed on Adiz and his smirk returned. Of course, he said coldly. Some of you need not dream of contests. We all know who will embarrass us if given a chance. The class chuckled, but a few students glanced at Adiz differently now. Some with pity, some with doubt, some with quiet curiosity. Adiz clenched her fists under the desk. One day, she thought, I'll solve a problem no one could deny. And when I do, even the walls will stand for me. The stage was set. The test scores lingered in the air like a secret no one wanted to acknowledge. Adiz had nearly topped the class, yet Mr. Obinna's dismissal had erased it from memory. Or almost. As Adiz packed her bag after class, she heard a timid voice behind her. You did well. whispered Kayamika, a quiet girl who often sat 2 rows behind. "I saw your paper before the teacher snatched it away. You were right." Adiz froze. No one had ever admitted such a thing to her before. She smiled faintly. "Thank you." Kayamika glanced nervously around, as though worried the walls themselves might report her. Then she slipped away quickly. It was only a few words, but they lit a fire in Adiz's chest. Maybe she wasn't invisible after all. The wealthiest boy in class, Santo, noticed the whispers too. His father was a prominent businessman, and he was used to being at the top of everything: grades, sports, even attention. But Adiz's sudden spark of competence gnawed at him. He made it his mission to remind her of her place. "Careful, farmer's girl," he said one morning as she entered. "Don't mistake weeds or crops. One good score doesn't make you intelligent." The laughter that followed was sharp, but Adiz didn't flinch this time. Instead, she met his gaze, her silence louder than any insult. That silence unnerved him more than tears ever could. Night after night, Adiz returned to Uncle Chaik. The old man would lean back in his chair, eyes clouded, but his mind sharp as ever. "Mathematics," he said one evening, "is not just numbers. It is patience. It is farming. You sow a seed, you water it, and only after time do you harvest. Rush the harvest, and you reap nothing." Adiz nodded, remembering the long hours spent over yam mounds with her father. It was the same. Planting, waiting, believing. By the lantern light, she solved problem after problem until exhaustion pulled at her eyelids. But she pressed on, because every equation conquered felt like a step away from shame. Excitement buzzed in the classroom when Mr. Obina announced the upcoming regional math contest. "Only the best shall represent this academy," he declared. Samto's chest swelled with pride. Everyone assumed he would be chosen. Then, with deliberate cruelty, Mr. Obina's gaze shifted to Adiz. "And of course," he sneered, "we cannot let charity cases embarrass us. So certain people need not apply." The class laughed, some nervously, others cruelly. Adiz's fists clenched beneath her desk. She said nothing, but in her heart a vow formed: "I will not be erased." During lunch break, as Adiz ate her simple meal of roasted yam slices, Kayamika approached cautiously. "Don't let him break you," she whispered. Adiz looked up, startled. "Why do you care?" Kayamika hesitated. Because I see myself in you. My family isn't as rich as the others. I know what it feels like." For the first time, Adiz felt the beginning of friendship, a hand reaching to the fog of isolation. Sometimes one ally was worth more than 100 enemies. At the weekly assembly, where students from all classes gathered, Mr. Obina decided to make a spectacle. Today, he announced, "Let's test our students' wit." His eyes scanned the crowd until they landed on Adiz. "Scholarship girl, solve this for everyone." A hush fell. The problem he recited was monstrous, complex, enough to intimidate even the seniors. Adiz's hands shook as hundreds of eyes bore into her. She tried to recall Uncle Chaik's teachings, but the pressure was suffocating. Her answer faltered, incomplete. Mr. Obina's voice thundered. "And this, children, is why not everyone belongs in St. Bartholomew's." The crowd erupted in laughter, her humiliation echoing across the hall. That night, Adiz cried silently into her pillow, but when the tears dried, she picked up her pencil again. She would not let him win. The rainy season arrived, and with it, heavier burdens at home. Adiz woke earlier to help her father fortify the yam ridges against flooding before rushing to school. Exhaustion clung to her body, but her mind burned brighter. Every cruel word from Mr. Obina was a seed of fire inside her. Sometimes, as she studied, she imagined standing before the entire class and solving a problem so perfectly that even Mr. Obina would have no words. The thought kept her going. Another test came. This time, the results pinned on the board told a quiet story. Samto, 78. Kayamika, 81. Adiz, 84. Gasps rippled across the room. For a moment, silence reigned. Then Mr. Obina stepped forward, plucking Adiz's paper from the stack. "Mistake," he declared flatly. "This must be rechecked." He never returned the corrected score, simply marked it down as lower. But the students had seen. Whispers began to spread, cracks forming in the teacher's authority. At night, the wealthy students in the dormitories whispered about her. Did you see her score? She's just lucky. No, I think she's actually good. The murmurs spread like wildfire. Though many still mocked her openly, a seed of doubt was growing. If the farmer's daughter could rise, what did that say about them? The regional contest drew nearer. Posters decorated the notice boards, and students buzzed with excitement. Though Mr. O'Binna still refused to acknowledge her, Adiz trained harder with Uncle Chike. She studied until her lantern's flame nearly died each night. One evening, Uncle Chike said softly, Adiz, remember this. The world often laughs before applauds. Endure the laughter. The applause will come. She nodded, eyes fierce. She didn't know when or how, but she felt in her bones. A day was coming when all the whispers, all the mockery, all the cruelty, would break against the truth like waves against a rock. And when that day came, no one would ever see her as just a farmer's daughter again. The notice board confirmed what everyone already suspected. Samto and 2 other wealthy students had been selected to represent the academy at the regional contest. Adiz's name was nowhere in sight. She stood before the board, eyes fixed on the neat handwriting, her chest tight. She had expected it, but the sting still pierced. Around her, classmates whispered, some laughing softly, others glancing with a mixture of pity and relief. Did you think he'd pick you? Samto taunted as he passed. Go back to your farm. Adiz didn't reply, but as she turned away, her jaw was set like stone. She would find another way to prove herself. That week, during a heated math lesson, Samto raised his hand smugly. Sir, why don't you let Adiz solve something again? Maybe she'll surprise us. The class erupted in laughter, but Mr. O'Binna's eyes gleamed. An excellent idea. Adiz to the board. It was a trap. She knew it, but refusing would be worse. She rose, her legs steady this time. As she faced the chalkboard, the numbers stared back like enemies. She took a deep breath and began to write. The whispers swelled, the mockery crackled behind her. But she pressed on. Minutes later, she turned. The answer was right. Perfect. For a heartbeat, silence fell. Then Mr. O'Binna's voice sliced through it. Wrong. He erased the board swiftly before anyone else could verify. The class laughed again, and Adiz returned to her seat, fists clenched. But this time, more than one student frowned, unconvinced. Whispers spread after class. I think she was right, but Sir said she was wrong. Didn't you see? He erased it too fast. For the first time, suspicion tainted Mr. O'Binna's authority. But his voice still commanded the room, and his cruelty weighed heavier than doubt. Adiz sat in silence, but deep inside, she knew something was shifting. One stormy evening, rain pounding against the hut's roof, Adiz studied furiously under her lantern. The sound of thunder seemed to echo her determination. Her mother brought her roasted maize. My daughter, you push yourself too hard. I have to, Mama, Adiz whispered. They want me to fail, but I won't give them the chance. Her father, overhearing, placed a calloused hand on her shoulder. Then remember, when the soil resists, dig deeper. You were born a farmer's daughter. You know how to endure. Adiz nodded, her eyes shining with quiet fire. It happened during another school assembly. Hundreds of students filled the hall, the teachers seated at the front. Mr. O'Binna stood tall, chalk in hand, and said, Let's challenge our brightest minds. Samto, come forward. Samto solved the problem easily. Applause followed. Then, with a sly smile, Mr. O'Binna called, Adiz! Let the school see the difference between real talent and misplaced charity. Gasps filled the hall. Everyone knew what this meant. Another public humiliation. Adiz rose slowly, heart pounding, but her steps firm. The problem was monstrous, a combination of algebra, geometry, and logic. The crowd leaned forward, eager for spectacle. As Adiz worked, whispers rose. She's stuck already. She'll cry again. Why does he keep calling her? Her hand trembled slightly, but she fought to steady it. Step by step, she wrote, recalling Uncle Chike's lessons, her father's words, and her own nights of struggle. Halfway through, she paused, sweat on her forehead. See? Samto jeered. She's lost. Laughter burst out, cruel and cutting. Adiz gripped the chalk tighter. No, she whispered to herself. Not this time. Then it happened. The numbers clicked. The fog cleared. Her hand moved swiftly, confidently. Each line she wrote connected to the next like threads of a net tightening around prey. She no longer heard the laughter. She was lost in the rhythm of logic. Minutes passed. The hall grew quieter, murmurs replaced by awe as her solution unfolded with precision. Finally, she placed the chalk down, turned, and faced the stunned audience. The answer was flawless. For a long moment, no one spoke. The board glowed with the brilliance of her solution. Even the skeptical students could see it. Perfect, undeniable. Mr. Obina's face darkened. He opened his mouth, perhaps to discredit her again. But before he could, one brave voice rose. She's right. It was Kayamika. Then another voice joined. Yes, I followed it. She's correct. Soon, murmurs grew into a chorus. One by one, students stood, their eyes fixed not on Mr. Obina, but on Adiz. It was like a wave. First, a few, then more. Then nearly the entire hall rose to their feet, standing for the farmer's daughter who had been mocked, humiliated, and dismissed. The sound of applause filled the air, raw, powerful, undeniable. Adiz stood frozen, overwhelmed, her eyes stinging with tears she refused to let fall. Mr. Obina's authority crumbled before him, exposed by the very voices he had controlled with fear. The underdog had risen, and the whole class stood with her. Mr. Obina's lips trembled. For the first time, he found no words. His chalk fell to the floor with a dull tap. The principal, who had been watching quietly, stood. His voice carried across the hall. Brilliance has no title. It is not bought by wealth, nor erased by ridicule. Today we witness truth. The applause swelled again, echoing through the assembly hall. Adiz lowered her head humbly, her heart pounding. She had dreamed of this moment, but the reality was sharper, sweeter, more powerful than she had ever imagined. For once, justice had been served, not by revenge, but by undeniable truth. And from that day, no one ever dared call her just a farmer's daughter again. Mr. Gambo leaned against his desk with that same smug smile that had once broken Zara's confidence. He said, Well, farmer's daughter, let's see if your miracle streak continues. Solve this. He scribbled a monstrous problem on the board, one far beyond the syllabus. The class gasped. This wasn't a test of knowledge. It was humiliation disguised as teaching. For a moment, Zara's hand shook holding the chalk. Whispers darted across the room. See? She stuck. She was lucky before. But in Zara's mind, her father's voice rang clear. When the land looks impossible, look closer. There's always a way. She steadied her breath. Instead of diving straight into calculations, Zara paused, eyes narrowing at the board. She began simplifying, stripping away layers of complexity. One by one, what looked like chaos became patterns. Hidden beauty only someone trained to observe deeply could see. Her chalk moved slowly at first, then faster, until gasps filled the classroom. Wait, she's solving it, one boy whispered. Another student leaned forward, mesmerized. Line after line appeared, until Zara boxed the final answer. She turned silently, her eyes steady on Mr. Gambo. The room exploded with applause. Students stood on their feet, some pounding desks. It was no longer mockery. It was respect. The smirk vanished. For the first time, Mr. Gambo looked unsure. His mouth opened, but no words came. He glanced at the board, then at Zara. She had solved what even some teachers struggled with. The power he had wielded to belittle her slipped like sand through his fingers. At that exact moment, Principal Adewale entered the room, drawn by the commotion. What is happening here? He asked, his voice stern. The students immediately pointed to Zara, still holding the chalk. She solved it, sir. The impossible problem. Principal Adewale studied the board, his eyes widening in disbelief. "Mr. Gambo," the principal said slowly, "you assigned this problem?" Gambo stammered. I was testing her limits. But the principal wasn't convinced. He turned to Zara. "My child, where did you learn this?" Zara's voice quivered, but it carried strength. "From my father. He taught me to never fear what looks difficult." Silence swept over the classroom. The students looked at Zara with a new reverence. They weren't laughing at a farmer's daughter anymore. They were staring at a leader. Some even muttered, "We should be learning from her." Principal Adewale faced. "Mr. Gambo, you tried to embarrass her, didn't you? Instead, you embarrassed yourself." Gambo's face turned pale. His authority, once absolute, was now crumbling in front of the very students he ruled with fear. He tried to regain control, snapping, "Class dismissed." But no one moved. They stood with Zara. One by one, students rose to their feet, clapping, not for fear, not for obedience, but for justice. The sound shook the room, echoing against the walls. Zara, who once sat invisible at the back, was now at the center. For the first time, Mr. Gambo realized the farmer's daughter he mocked had become the voice of the class. The applause still thundered when Principal Adewale raised his hand for silence. He studied Zara with admiration and Mr. Gambo with disappointment. This classroom should build students up, not tear them down. Today, Zara has shown more courage and brilliance than most adults I know. Mr. Gambo's voice cracked. "But, sir, she's just a farmer's daughter." "She—" The words hung heavy, outdated, cruel. The students muttered in disapproval. Principal Adewale cut him short. "Enough. Education does not belong to the wealthy alone. Every child has the right to learn and to shine." Zara lowered her gaze, embarrassed by the attention. But deep inside, she felt her father's strength flowing through her veins. She hadn't only solved the problem on the board. She had solved the problem of her own silence. The shy girl had transformed into a voice of courage. One brave classmate stood. "Sir, we've all seen it. Mr. Gambo bullies those he thinks are weak." But Zara stood up, and now we see the truth. Others nodded fiercely. For the first time, the students united not in fear but in solidarity. Mr. Gambo's shoulders slumped. He could feel the authority he'd clung to dissolving. The same students who once trembled before him now looked at him with contempt. He wasn't a powerful figure anymore. He was exposed. And Zara, the girl he mocked, had taken center stage without even trying. Principal Adewale's voice was firm. "Mr. Gambo, you will face the school board for your conduct. For now, you are relieved of teaching duties." Gasps filled the room. Gambo opened his mouth, but no words came. He staggered back, defeated. The principal turned to Zara. "Child, you have given the school a lesson no textbook could teach." The students rose again, every single one of them, applauding until the room trembled. Zara's eyes filled with tears, not of shame, but of triumph. By the next day, the story spread across the village. People whispered in the marketplace. "Did you hear? The farmer's daughter solved the impossible problem." Parents pointed her out to their children. "That girl, she proved that knowledge is not about status, but perseverance." That evening, Zara's father sat silently as neighbors congratulated him. He looked at his daughter, pride shining through weary eyes. "You've shown them, Zara, you've shown them what a farmer's daughter can do." Zara hugged him, whispering, "It was your lessons that gave me the courage, Papa." The narrator's voice closes the story. Sometimes the world underestimates those who come from humble soil, but like seeds, they rise higher than anyone expects. Because strength is not in where you're planted, but how you grow. Remember, never mock the hands until the earth, for they may solve problems the proud cannot. The screen fades with the words. Respect everyone. Greatness can rise from anywhere.